Just where the hell do you think you're going, you idiot?
I felt very isolated, so I felt very alone. I felt very just dumb. Like, you feel just like you're stupid. How can you go through this?
Why are you treating me like this?
Because you need to learn respect.
He said, you need to respect me. And he start slapping me in the beginning because I need to respect him. He don't want to hear nothing from me.
It is reported that 1 in every 4 women and 1 in every 7 men experience some sort of domestic abuse. It is a social problem that knows no bounds. Domestic violence happens every day in just about every community.
It happens across the board. It happens to professionals. It happens to people in lower income, all and everyone in between, in every community, in every town.
It crosses all racial, socioeconomic, educational levels.
Typically, we see the highest rates of domestic violence in between the ages of 18 and 24. So that's why we see usually college students experiencing it at a much higher rate because they're entering relationships a lot for the first time.
And that includes right here in DuPage County.
Last year, we had 1,894 misdemeanor cases of domestic violence, which was an 8% increase over the year before and a 20% increase since 2021.
People hear the word domestic violence and somebody has acted out in an aggressive way. They often think that, oh, that person just got angry and it's an anger issue and they lost control and had an outburst.
If somebody were on the streets and somebody were to hit somebody else or punch somebody else, we would easily see that as an assault. Punishable by imprisonment or crime, something like that. Whereas if it's a husband or a wife or somebody who we see as chooses to be in that relationship, it's not seen as something that's as serious.
If the only thing you remember about domestic violence is power and control, then you understand what abuse is.
The Illinois Domestic Violence Act, it lays out a qualifying domestic relationship between the parties, which does include intimate partners, but it can be any familial relationships.
It really could be a lot of different types of relationships, but it is probably most common amongst married couples.
Victims of domestic violence histories consist of multiple forms of victimization where they have come to believe that this is just what relationships consist of. This is what I deserve. This is what I always attract. And so all those sort of misperceptions and brokenness go into then choosing, quote unquote, choosing to be in a relationship like that or not leaving a relationship like that.
I told myself that would never happen to me like it did with my mom. It did, and it tore me down as a person. And I don't recognize who I am anymore.
For some of those people, they also grew up in an abusive home and they learned that that's the way you behave in relationships. Those are the expectations, those are the gender roles. So I think we see some of that show up, but unfortunately, some people are just more prone to that power and control.
College is full of people who are engaged in dating relationships, and so being young and maybe not having the coping skills that most adults hopefully have developed, it provides an environment where domestic violence can happen.
It takes a lot for people to disclose that they're being abused, and a lot of individuals that we've come in contact with don't even realize that they are being abused.
Some people ask me what happened, and I say, I fall down in the stairs. And say, how? The whole leg is the bruises.
There's the obvious signs of physical abuse, so like bruising and lacerations, abrasions, unexplained physical injuries.
Maybe they're starting to change what they wear. So if it's the middle of summer and they're wearing a long sleeve shirt, those can be indicators of that.
All patients that come to the hospital in our emergency departments, they get screened for domestic violence.
Picking up on those subtle things,
Lack of eye contact, injuries that aren't consistent with how they're saying they happened. We really need to be kind of focused on those things and have what we call like a questioning attitude.
They may come in and say, this happened to me, my husband did this, I'm done with it. Or they may not be ready to say that. They may not feel safe saying that, or they may not have quite grasped that what happened to them is wrong and it shouldn't happen.
We're really going to just be looking for a shift in their behavior. So if you have less of a relationship with someone, but you notice a change, then you can ask some indirect questions, just how have things been going? I've noticed some change. I just wanted to check in. Is there anything you want to touch base about? But if you know someone on a deeper level, that's when we really want to ask direct questions because their safety is at risk.
Showing care, showing empathy, not showing any judgment might make this person open up and speak about their situation.
10 years can go by and they still are in the same mental space and feeling depressed and anxious.
There's a lot of reasons why people don't leave domestic violence relationships, one of which is that they don't have other alternatives and options, financial being one of the biggest ones. But it also has to do with the reality that many victims know who are in those relationships, that if they leave those relationships, that's when the danger escalates.
Domestic violence is a cycle. Once a victim is in the cycle, sometimes it's hard for them to get out of it.
We move through this pattern from honeymoon to tension building to the explosion phase. After the explosion phase, we want to make things better, right? So we end up back here in the honeymoon phase.
This person comes back and apologizes and brings flour, whatever their way is. And so to kind of gear back that person, the survivor or the victim, into that mode where, it was just this incident. I mean, you just did this. And then they never own the action. They're just gonna go if you only didn't say that word or if you didn't do this, I wouldn't have been, so mad or so angry and so on.
I'm really sorry about the other night.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry too, honey.
I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal. It's just, I love you so much. You mean the world to me.
Oh, honey, I love you too.
Sometimes I get this feeling that you're too good for me and that you're gonna leave me. And I mean, some of the things you say and you do just make me so angry,
I know, and I'm so sorry, and I promise I'll do better.
Victims tend to associate the peace with something that the perpetrator has given to them. So peacetime is actually a gift that is something that person wants so desperately, because we all want that in peace and, compassionate relationships. And so when those peace times come, it's oftentimes associated with something that he gave to her.
They leave 7 times before they leave for good has been a statistic. And like I said, I see repeated, people coming back through the system.
So when people hit bottom and feel like they're not safe, and, sometimes it takes a lot where you feel like your life is on the line, your children's life is on the line. And so people then, they're more motivated to leave.
When my boy have almost 5 years old, I went to work. And when I came back, the buckle of the belt was in his butt. And I say, what happened? And he said, my father. And I called my friend and I told what happened. And I said, I need a place to live today.
For victims in crisis who need immediate help, there are numerous advocacy groups who can provide confidential, effective support.
We're really the gateway in the emergency department to resources that the patient needs.
Family Shelter Services is one of those resources, which is our go-to at our police department and in DuPage County. They are kind of a one-stop shop for all things domestic violence They have a 24-hour hotline. They provide sheltering services, counseling services, and they'll even provide guidance related to like how to obtain an order of protection, which is important for the abused.
When a survivor or a victim is seeking an order of protection, there is a courtroom in DuPage County that's dedicated to hearing those cases. And they have to meet certain criteria in order for the judge to issue an order of protection, what we would call maybe emergency order of protection, which is a civil order of protection. There's stalking no contact orders of protection, as well as civil no contact order of protection.
Typically, it will involve the respondent or the offender, if there's a criminal case, staying away from the victim or having no contact with the victim, which can include not going near the home, not going near a place of employment, no phone calls, no text messages, no reaching out via Facebook. In some cases, the judge can order the respondent to vacate the residence if the victim and the respondent are living together.
However, victims frequently change their minds about going forward with these orders of protection.
There's a lot of factors that really scare victims from coming to court.
Oftentimes, victims don't want to follow through with the criminal case that the state's attorney's office is prosecuting because of their concerns of what potentially may happen to them, either maybe financially, physically, all the kinds of considerations that put someone into that cycle. And oftentimes, they call it that honeymoon phase. Sometimes after a perpetrator or the abuser is arrested, then that person tries to, basically win over the victim and makes promises and, maybe even, makes financial promises as well on top of promises that this is not going to happen again.
Without a cooperating victim, there's very little teeth that the courts really have, and the offender then is left to walk and continue the cycle of violence with impunity without any real consequences.
The key is assuring them that the system is going to work so that they have faith in the system, that we're actually going to obtain a result that helps them.
DuPage County offers a comprehensive, easy-to-access portal with numerous resources for victims of domestic violence and abuse.
We have tremendous resources to help survivors of domestic violence recover, to get them on the right track.
The Family Violence Coordinating Council is a grant-based initiative. It's a collaboration of the courts, law enforcement, and advocacy groups in order to better respond to domestic violence. The council is very proud of the QR code initiative that we have put together amongst all the different agencies that are involved. It's a means to access resources very quickly and easily through one webpage.
And we have found that this works a lot better than giving them a piece of paper, which can end up in the wrong hands or which victims a lot of times will misplace.
And we are hoping to spread it throughout universities in DuPage County. Also, it is in hospitals. It's on discharge papers for patients that present with symptoms of abuse. They're able to access it in an easy fashion and then hopefully utilize the resources available to them.
While violence is the most common, it's important to know there are many other types of domestic abuse.
Besides, physical abuse, because I think that stands out in everybody's mind, there is emotional abuse, there's spiritual abuse.
We also see a lot of financial abuse. So typically, if there's domestic violence, there's usually an element of financial abuse.
And being harassed by social media. Quite often we have people come in who say that their abusive partner is monitoring their emails or their text messages.
We definitely see digital abuse show up because, as we know, we all have our phones on us all of the time. So it's just another way for someone to cause harm by constantly trying to contact you through that device.
Better be home early, and you better take your phone with you. If I call or text you, I expect a response. I bought you that phone to keep track of you.
I will.
I've heard from several survivors sometimes that the emotional scars can hurt worse than the physical scars because that really changes your brain, how you think of yourself. It has a really deep impact.
And don't forget that COD is a caring community that provides all sorts of assistance.
The college has a number of resources too that an abused victim could pursue. We have a counseling department that offers short-term mental health counseling.
We can support you as counselors here. We can talk to you. We can give you materials. We can educate you. The fact that this person has someone to come here and talk to, that is a support in itself.
We have a Title IX coordinator whose job is to provide resources to abused people who experience dating violence or sexual violence. The Dean of Students is a tremendous resource.
We can provide you with a list of resources, agencies that are community agencies that can help you.
Our police department is staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and our officers are always here to support. It's an important part of what we do. It's an important part of the student success formula.
Meet Maria and Francesca. Both are members of the College of DuPage community, and both are healing from their experiences with domestic violence and abuse. Maria has chosen to remain anonymous. Her story begins in Mexico when a man offered to drive her home from a party.
And he offered to me to drive me home, but he don't drive me home. And he told me I need to sleep with him that night, and I don't want to. So he told me, you don't want to do it, you can get out from the car. And I did. So he came back like 30 minutes later and he abused me. And he was living over here. And he brought me here in the country. And that's when everything started. You know, he was very abusive. Even though domestic violence have a cycle of abuse, reconciliation, or honeymoon, and again, it's another big circle when we women like me come from other countries. Because the abuse is over the legal status in the country. You don't have paperwork. You don't have, nobody can help to you. You don't have legal status. So they threat you with that.
Maria's abuse was far more serious than simply financial, psychological, and immigration.
One time he sent me to a hospital with the broken ribs. And then when I came back, one of my best friends, and she said, he will kill you. And the doctor said, a little bit more and you can die. And I continued back with him because I don't have any support. And everything continued, never stopped. I have a third pregnant and was a twins, but I lose it because of him. The day when I was in the hospital, the doctors did something, and later on I know it was when I lose the babies, and a doctor told him they cannot survive the 3. So when I back home after this, there was worse, because he said, you owe me your life. And 10 years later, I come pregnant again. And one day I was laid down because I feel sick. And he went and said, get up. He take it and a stick. And he started hitting me when I was in bed. I was so scared.
Finally, after more than 20 years, Maria left her abuser for good. While working with an advocate, Maria was set on the first steps to recovery.
So she started to me, now you need to move on. You need to go to College of DuPage and ask for the classes for English. And this is what I did. When you learn English, College of DuPage, and you finish all the course in English, they offer $500 if you want continuing education. College of DuPage, they give me the opportunity to use their $500 to start study for my GED. And I did. After I have my GED, I say, you know what? This is not enough. I need to move on because the way I feel too bad. So somebody told me, you can take it a training for domestic violence professional. And I take the information, and I did. And I take the classes, and I become a certified domestic violence professional.
Now meet Francesca, a victim of domestic abuse.
Well, the first exposure for me with domestic abuse was when my mother got married to my stepfather. The day she married him was the day that he really became really controlling, abusive. Like, he was yelling and screaming at her that day, and then from just there on, it just continued and escalated. The abuse I more so experienced from him was verbally. He would be screaming, yelling, and he would call me a liar and accuse me of doing things that I didn't do. So it was just very traumatizing to experience it, but to see him be physical with my mother, to hit her, or he was throwing things, and I was able to just convince my mom, we can no longer live like this. You don't deserve this. Why are we staying, And mostly it was him psychologically, playing on her. She went from being a very confident person to just not really caring about her appearance and how she looked. She kept a job. She was able to maintain her job, but it was just outside of that, she was just not who she was anymore. And then her having my brother, I think that was kind of the nail in the coffin, saying, I got to get them out of this situation.
Sadly, Francesca's history of domestic abuse didn't end there.
I ended up having a child with somebody who also was emotionally abusive. There was a lot of gaslighting, saying, oh, I never said that, I didn't do that, trying to kind of play on your emotional mind, your psychological mind, to think did that really happen to me, or is it happening to me? And it tore me down as a person, and I don't recognize who I am anymore. Once somebody has your mind, they have everything. They have your physical, but they have complete control over you. They controlling what you think, what you do, what you say, how you act, and everything. It just changes you completely.
As is common among victims of domestic violence and abuse, it took Francesca numerous attempts before leaving her abuser for good.
I had left multiple times and returned because he would promise me and say, oh, it's gonna be different. I love you, I care, I wanna be a family. And then within probably a couple months, it's a totally different situation. So it takes time. It doesn't take maybe just that one time of leaving. It took multiple times. The last time that we kind of moved away, we were living in Texas, and he moved to Texas with where we were, and my son really just couldn't handle it. So that's how we ended up moving back to Illinois, to get away, to escape it, because I didn't want him to experience the things that I had been through with his dad.
Francesca is now working on her own healing process.
Well, I remember the first time I went to counseling after that whole process started with my child's father, and she was like, you're codependent. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm very independent. But I didn't get, defensive with her. I was like, let me go back and research what codependency is. And once I learned what codependency was, I realized that I was taught that very well from my mother. It was that cycle repeating itself and walking on eggshells and trying to be the fixer and trying to make it right when it was wrong all along. And I'm in school now to become a social worker. Is where I want to be. I want to help others. That's always been who I've been in life, and just trying to take it a day at a time and realize I need to work on myself. I need to heal to become a better person if I choose to go forward and be in a relationship with anybody.
College of DuPage is part of that healing process for Francesca. Like with all recovering victims, reclaiming their power and enjoying life is what the path to recovery teaches.
Abuse doesn't help anyone, and you should realize what your worth is. It is not somebody to be walked all over. You deserve more.
I have a freedom. I have a freedom. I can decide where I go, what to eat, what to wear, who will be my friends, how I want to live. And then I think for the first time I feel peaceful.
And I went back to school. I started this summer. I hadn't been to school since probably 2011. I went for dental assistant in, but going back now for something that I like to do in social work with COD, I enjoy it. And so I took 2 classes over the summer online. I got A's in both of them. So I feel like I'm headed in the right direction. And that's part of the healing process. You feel good about yourself when you're able to do something for yourself.
It is important to remember that if you or someone you know is a victim of domestic violence or abuse, that immediate, confidential, and proven help is available through numerous outlets, like the Family Violence Coordinating Council, which can be accessed through this QR code.